Hello. This video is probably the most important video in the whole series. You see, in this series I'm wanting to try to help you to understand something of the refugee's heart, of his deepest needs. He has physical needs that need to be met, of course, very, very important, but his deepest needs are emotional. And I want to try to help you to meet some of those deepest needs which he has, or she has, of course, if this is a lady or a girl. And actually some of the things I'm sharing with you would apply equally to any stranger, not just a refugee. I believe that the single most important factor in how helpful we are to a refugee, do I place myself below him to serve him, or above him to impress? That is incredibly important. Upwards or downwards. But we'll come to that in a minute. In the previous videos, we saw a picture of the refugee's broken heart. And we are asking the question how we can help to heal that broken heart. We saw how he now needs new relationships to start to help fill the relationships he's lost. To begin with, he needs at least one friend who cares for him. You might say, well, I'm happy to be that friend, but how do I go about it? You ask, what does the refugee really need from me? You know what? His biggest need is for an emotional cuddle. Yes, an emotional cuddle. And you can give it to him. He needs to know the warmth of your friendship. He needs to know that he is valued as a person. He's important. He needs to know that he has at least one person that he can really count on. That is the emotional cuddle that he needs. He needs someone who tries to share in the pain and the struggles. Someone who tries to empathize with him in some way. And someone who helps him in his transition to the new life. Someone he can call upon when he needs help. Just like a baby that's beginning life needs to be helped, needs response when he cries, needs a cuddle. So you can be the person who will cuddle this refugee and help him to grow into his new situation. In fact, initially, your relationship with the refugee might be a bit like a parent with a child, in that it may seem that the relationship is basically one way. You give more than you receive. But do you remember that old proverb? It is in giving that you receive. And very soon you're likely to find that you are receiving far more than you are giving. And now to that very important point. Do I serve the refugee upwards or downwards? Do I place myself below him and serve him upwards? Or do I place myself above him to impress? Our natural tendency is to relate downwards, to impress. It's a question of who's in focus in the relationship. Who is the most important? Is it me or is it the refugee? In all my helping, am I really concerned about that person, or am I just trying to feel good myself? Am I trying to look good in front of others? Am I trying to impress people? if I am, then there will never be a real relationship between me and the refugee. And if the focus is on me, I will never be able to help to heal that broken heart. The only way to help heal his heart is for him to be the focus and not me. So how do I best help him? By looking for his needs and trying to meet them, and at the same time by inviting him or her to become part of my life. We build relationships by putting ourselves below the person, serving the person from our heart. If I treat the refugee as someone below me, he will probably sense that. It might make me feel good, but he will realize that you're not really valuing him as a real person, and that is what he so desperately needs. Do you see that the arrow between me and the refugee is actually blunt? It isn't a real relationship. Let's come back to the key point which I mentioned earlier. The greatest thing the refugee needs is a cuddle. He needs to know that he is loved. He needs to know that he's valued. He needs to know that he's cared for. And you can give him that cuddle he so desperately needs. Yes, the practical things like food, clothing, housing, they're all very important. But his deepest need in his heart is for someone to have a relationship with him, to care for him, who shows that he's valued, who empathizes with his struggles, his losses, his pains. Someone who comes alongside and is there for him to help him through this most traumatic time of his life. We can only do this by serving upwards. We cannot do it if we're only serving downwards. What about the people in social services? Isn't it their job to help the refugee? Yes, it is. And most people in the social services do a great job, really put their hearts into it, really work hard. But you could say that they sort of serve sideways, neither up nor down. They do focus on the refugee and his needs, and yet their work is limited. They may not be around in the evenings, at weekends, or in a year's time. Whereas your friendship could go on for many years. The refugee needs a friend he can count on at any time, and a friendship that will last. So let us remember this most important lesson, that if we're really going to help the refugee, if we're really going to cuddle him, we need to serve him upwards and not downwards. In the next video, I'd like us to look at relationships. The difference between how the refugee likely sees relationships and how we see relationships. The difference between what I call the peanut culture that we live in and the melon culture that he probably comes from. I hope you'll join me.